I mentioned briefly as we got started this morning the potential for an upcoming scandal in Washington, and the media is still in an uproar over Donald Trump's comments over the weekend that he had been bugged by. Well, I think that they call it wiretapping, but bugged by. We all were bugged by President Obama, right? At least at one time or another over the last 8 years. Some of us on a daily basis. That his offices at Trump Tower had been, well, bugged by the president or someone on the president's staff as part of the investigation into the so-called Russian hacking. Not of the election, of the Russian hacking that may have happened of Democrat Party emails. Got a couple of notes on that this morning, and I want to share with you one of those very quickly from Andrew C. McCarthy, a former federal prosecutor writing at National Review today. While you weren't looking, the Democrat media election hacking narrative just collapsed. Now, this is lengthy. If you print this out from National Review's website, it is 5.5 pages long, which is lengthy for people in our modern world. In the old days, before we had a lot of competition for our eyeballs from television and the internet, and even before radio, people did do a lot more reading. That's true. But I got to page 4 on this morning, and I have this. He writes, the media and the Democrats have always had a serious vulnerability here, talking about this so-called Russian hacking. One they've never acknowledged because they've been too swept away by the political success of the fantasy narrative, and it's this. He writes, at a certain point, if compelling evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia to steal the election did not materialize, the much more interesting question becomes, how did the government obtain all of this information that has been leaked to the media to prop up the story? The most plausible answer to that question, the Obama White House. Through the Justice Department and the FBI was investigating the associates of the opposition party's presidential nominee and perhaps even the nominee himself during the campaign. Otherwise, what explanation can there be for all of the investigative information, much of it classified and thus illegal to disclose, that has been funneled to the press? So Trump was being criticized as being a bit of an oaf and ungainly and shooting at the hip, whatever you want to say, because he tweeted out over the weekend that this was on the level of Watergate. Even if he wasn't being clever, it sure looks that he's clever now because it's shutting down the whole narrative of the Democrats and media, and I know that's redundant, but it's shutting down the fellow travelers in their efforts. Whether Trump intended it or not, 10 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com, which means a great part of this story. First, it was fake news. You know, they tried everything they can to excuse the election and delegitimize the voters who voted for Donald Trump and Mr. Trump as president, that their final excuse may have been extinguished, which, if you're a good, hardworking, decent middle American, is a good thing. And it's long overdue, and maybe we can now get down to the business of letting Mr. Trump govern the country, which is what he's supposed to be doing. I've also been listening to some of the people who've had various input on all of this over the last few days, and some of them, I don't know why we have so many people out there who get so incensed by all of this. There was a fellow who was appearing on Tucker Carlson's program. Let me back up a little bit here. Sean Hannity comes on Fox News as well, evenings, our time. What is it? I'm trying to do the math in my head. So O'Reilly's on at 6. Hannity's on at 7 our time. I'm not usually, because of my schedule for morning radio, I'm not usually awake to hear it. But I get to review a lot of it in the morning because of our association with Fox Radio. And he's speaking last night with Mark Levin. And he's asking Mark Levin a few questions about how Levin, because Levin says you can determine what's been going on here and say that Trump's claim is valid. And Levin was explaining some of this over the weekend, and he's trying to explain more of it last night to Sean Hannity.
How do we definitively find out that, in fact, in June and again in October, there were attempts to surveil the then candidate of the opposition party by the current administration at the time, the Obama administration?
Well, two things need to happen one way or another. Number one, the FISA applications, which Clapper denies, by the way. He denies, and the follow-up was pathetic over there at NBC, but we'll get to that. The FISA applications should be released. That's number one. The warrant that was supposedly secured in October should be released. The other thing that needs to be done is these daily presidential briefings that the president received, that the intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies coordinate on and prepare. The Intelligence Committee chairmen need to read them. And now we'll get to the bottom of this. Now, I find it very interesting. People are saying, well, let Trump release the damn FISA stuff. Can you imagine if he does that? He'd be accused of interfering with investigations, trying to intimidate the Justice Department. No. Let Congress finally step up and do its job. They have oversight committees. We pay these people to do their jobs. Now get into those damn FISA applications. Look at the so-called warrant. Hold on now.
Yeah.
Look at the warrant that was released. Look at these daily briefings, and let's see what's in them.
Now, I apologize for Mr. Levin's sometimes salty language. On the other hand, there's no need to apologize for who he happens to be. Media being an appendage, propaganda wing of the Democrat National Committee, is currently assailing him as just being a loudmouth talk show host. But he is a constitutional law scholar, and he did work as the chief of staff to the one-time Attorney General of the United States, Edwin Meese, during the Reagan years. So he didn't just stumble into this, if you will, because he's trying to make a lot of noise. He actually may have been doing a little research, and he actually may understand what we're talking about when it comes to what's legal and what isn't legal, and how this could work with the FISA court looking down Trump Tower. Meanwhile, Lefty is not having a good time with all of this. Mika Brzezinski, speaking on MSDNC's Morning Joe, had a bit of a nervous breakdown discussing this and claiming that Donald Trump is somehow trying to bring an end. This goes back to, if you can't call it fake news, and if you can't say it was the Russians, then you just flip the page and start screaming, Nazi, Nazi, Nazi.
I also don't understand why the former head of Breitbart appears to be handing the president some fake news, and the president is just riffing on it wildly, with no sense that he is president of the United States, no respect for the office, and calling former president of the United States unbelievable names. We're at a low point in American history, and I don't know how anybody can defend this president, even if it's their job. Like, you've got to have a job after this. You've got to look in the mirror after this. Sarah Huckabee, or whoever is going to speak out next, you have to look in the mirror and think about this country after this is over. You need to think of the end game here, because there is one at the rate we're going.
Now, what horrible names did Donald Trump call his predecessor? He suggested that this was a lot like Watergate, and suggested that this is what totalitarian governments do to their opponents. But it's not like he used the N-word. It's not like he called Mr. Obama a communist. It's not like he called Mr. Obama Hitler or Mussolini or Stalin. So what names did he call his predecessor? Now, even if Barack Obama doesn't have his fingerprints directly on this potential story, somebody somewhere, and we're starting to learn, came up with a lot of details about Trump's associates that got leaked to the press. Therefore, somebody somewhere was listening in. And President Obama wouldn't have to go give that order. He could just simply nod his head when somebody said, we're going to be doing this, in the affirmative. This morning, and this is the first take because I'd been hearing if Mr. Obama had actually ordered it that he couldn't legally do it. But this morning, before I left the house, I had Fox and Friends on, and Judge Andrew Napolitano, also a constitutional law scholar, was on the program. And he was saying President Obama could have ordered this. He said, by the way, I read the FISA statutes. By the way, I look at all of this. And we should point out that FISA has been used since it was created 39 years ago, on the order of about 32,000 times in this country, and it's only been rejected a couple of dozen. Its use when there's been an application. That's a lot. And it's a star chamber. It's a secret court. It runs against everything our founding fathers believed in. But according to Judge Napolitano, President Obama could legally order the use of a wiretap and claim it was for national security reasons. And Napolitano went on to say it's not illegal. On the other hand, it would destroy the Democrat Party for a generation and Obama's reputation if indeed it's true. Now you know why Mika Brzezinski, the daughter of Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor and responsible for giving Iran to the Mad Mullahs and Afghanistan to the Soviet Union, why she's so incensed by all of this, because it threatens their worldview and their position and their sycophancy when it comes to Barack Obama. 917, we have a caller with us on Top Story. You're up next. You're on KLIX.
Good morning. Did you by any chance listen to Sean Hannity yesterday?
Just bits and pieces while I was doing some shopping.
He had a guy on that was, I believe, from the NSA or something like that, and he ended up quitting because he couldn't handle it anymore, being involved in the corruption that was going on, and he's turned whistleblower. And bottom line was, is he said Trump is right in one fashion. He may not have ordered a wiretap, but Barack Obama's order that he put in is tapping everyone, including you, including me, including everyone. They're data mining every phone call, every text message, every email.
Which James Clapper tried to deny in front of a congressional committee and was later caught in the lie.
Right, and he said right on the deal, he lied about that. He's lied about it, and he's known about it for a long time. And what they're doing is they're going back through stuff. So whether they had a wiretap or not, they're actually digging back through phone calls trying to find dirt, which is illegal all the way around. Just data mining our stuff is illegal without a probable cause.
Probable cause was, and I thank you for the call, Donald Trump, especially in the last few weeks. You had polls saying Hillary was going to skate, but it was some pollsters and some people were looking at it and saying, Trump could pull this thing out, despite everything they'd already thrown at him. So they were starting to get nervous about it. Here's another thing. Hillary Clinton, those 30,000 emails that were never released. Remember, a week before the election, WikiLeaks, which supposedly was working in collusion with the Russians, had said it would release those in the waning days before the election, and then President Obama gave some stern warning to Vladimir Putin, saying, "Oh, you do that, and we'll never buy another bottle of borscht in this country again. Oh, so don't do it." And with that, the last 30,000 never were released. That's why they were trying to see what Donald Trump and his associates were up to. Meanwhile, if those 30,000 emails get released during this so-called investigation of Russian hacking, that would be very, very embarrassing for Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. And we just learned today, John Podesta, the idiot who used password for a password and allowed the Russians to get into the DNC emails in the first place, that he was lobbying. Yes, I'm just telling you this now for the first time today, exclusive in the Daily Caller this morning. He was lobbying for the Russians in this country. Did you know that? And he got a check for $170,000. Who was working with the Russians? Not Trump. John Podesta. Take for a moment and think, what would, if the shoes were on the other feet, and we reversed the situation and Barack Obama had said, "Oh, when I was running for president, George W. Bush happened to be spying on me and listening in on my phone conversations." What do you think the fellow travelers and media would have done about that? Oh, yes. Oh, we better have a close look at that. Yeah, that's the ticket. But since it's a Republican, and especially a Republican that they don't like, there is nothing to see here. What do you think we are, reporters? You think we dig into stuff? Come now, move out of the way. This is from the Daily Caller, which is not a traditionally liberal mainstream media outlet. It's founded by Tucker Carlson. Is that enough said? Democrat super lobbyist Tony Podesta, that's the brother of John Podesta, they're partners in the Podesta Group, was paid $170,000 over a 6-month period last year to represent Sberbank, Russia's largest bank, seeking to end one of the Obama administration's economic sanctions against the country. The Daily Caller News Foundation investigative group has learned. Podesta, founder and chairman of the Podesta Group, is listed as a key lobbyist on behalf of the bank, according to Senate lobbying disclosure forms. His firm received more than $24 million in fees in 2016, much of it coming from foreign governments, according to the Nonpartisan Center for Responsive Politics. And then it goes on to mention in paragraph 3, he's the brother of John Podesta, who was the national campaign chairman for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in 2016. Now, they work together in the business, lobbying and the like, and everyone has to make a living, I suppose. For all of you you liberals out there who think that your party is for the little guy, those are the people who run your party. You got it? That's what they do when they're not running the party. Or they do while they're running the party. Maybe that's a better way to put that. 925, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com, 36 right now. At least Republicans aren't afraid to say, yeah, we make money. Yeah, we work with a lot of people out there who probably have dirty hands. That's how the world works. Not everybody is going to become like the United States and adopt a constitution like ours. We have a lot of people out there who aren't very nice players. And for all the griping and moaning, I almost wrote my newspaper column this week about this whole notion that somehow the Russians are this huge danger and trying to take over our country, and they have a Manchurian candidate in the White House. The Chinese are building islands that they're going to use as bases in the Pacific. The Chinese are threatening their neighbors. The Chinese have a surrogate in North Korea that test-fired 4 missiles this week. That same surrogate says it's going to be nuking the United States in the next couple of years. The Russians aren't making any of those threats. And yet, Democrats aren't at all worried about North Korea, which also used poison gas to kill the potential heir to, well, if there was a coup, the half-brother of the current dictator of that country. So we know they have poison gas. Who knows what they'd put on the tips of those missiles, which could reach a good part of the United States of America. And, in fact, the Magic Valley of Idaho would be in range. Not that they'd find anything here they'd like to destroy, but at least it is telling that we are in range. And somehow, Lefty's media allies tell you that Donald Trump and the Russians are the big threat. Well, you got a guy on the other side of the world who's saying, this Kim Jong-un, he's going to destroy us. And you've got Iranians saying they're going to destroy us. So I think I can make a decision here as a rational human being on my own, and the real danger is being ignored by the fellow travelers. It's 9:27, 35 right now. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Austin Goolsbee, former aide to Barack Obama, appearing on the O'Reilly Factor on Fox News Channel last night, trying to defend his fellow travelers.
Do you really want there to be congressional investigation of who tapped Flynn's phone, but you are not concerned about a series of interactions between the Trump campaign and Russia? You don't want to have an investigation of that?
I've said it many times that I want to get to the bottom of that. But I also believe Clapper and Senator Cotton, who say, we haven't seen anything. Don't you believe them? You think they're liars?
But they said there were no FISA warrant on Trump Tower.
No.
And I could believe that.
Clapper clearly said, and I know you heard it, so don't spin.
Yeah.
There's no evidence produced to him of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. He said it clear as day.
Okay, but the question to him was about FISA warrants and tapping the phones.
Now you're getting, I'm getting dizzy. I'm getting dizzy.
The question is, the President of the United States accused President Obama of a felony. That was borderline insane.
Well,
I mean, they need to take his phone away.
As Speaker Gingrich
he should not be
pointed out,
accusing people of felonies with no evidence.
Clapper also said, and let's keep reminding people about this, when he was asked about the potential bugging of Trump Tower, he also said it didn't happen to my knowledge, which is his little exit strategy. Bill Colley with you this morning, 9:29. I've been telling you for the last several months about the total body transformation system, which has allowed me to drop about 70 pounds. Those people out there who have an interest in this, I'd like to remind you The average participant will lose 22 pounds over 60 days and drop 4 inches off a waist. It burns fat 6 times faster, and you'll lose 8 times more weight than normal results from diet and exercise alone. And leading scientific researchers across the country back this diet. And the meal replacement plan, healthier than the meals you're generally eating, and you can still have a healthy amount of calories every day. And the cost, people ask that all the time. Obviously, that's a big interest for people. It's about the same as the groceries that you're going to be replacing. So you're not going to be out any extra money if you participate. If you'd like to know a little bit more, you need to call Marketing Executive Don Chandler right here in Twin Falls. He's at 731-3560, 731-3560. He's also lost more than 50 pounds himself.